Things I knew. I was hired to kill a child, not old enough to cause any harm. The blonde man, the one that looked as though he was made of sunbeams and erotic dreams, was both the child's father and extremely dangerous. I was in over my head, the very same head that now whispered to me with thoughts that were not my own. I couldn't trust the thoughts and had to block them out. I needed to hide, and quickly, someplace the blonde man would never find me. At least not until the job was done. Then I'd laugh in his face as he butchered my body. So I came up with a plan, a devious, nefarious plan, the likes of which I was exceedingly proud of. I would hide in the last place that demon of a man would look, his house. I found the town with ease this time. It was almost as if the whole of the world trembled from my wrath and moved out of my way. I circled the house a dozen times, crisscrossing my trail in the snow over and over. Anyone who dared track me would have a blast, especially since I laid a few of my own traps hidden in the beautiful tattletale snow. I blocked out the voices that called to me by plugging my ears with my angry music, blaring on repeat. With a quick prayer to whatever God would listen, I waited for Cherub to be put to bed. As the lights in the house flicked off one by one, my pulse quickened. The familiar warmth filled my body, and I sighed in relief. As I stalked up to his window, I was infinitely surprised to find the window still unlocked. Perhaps there was something in prayer. My mind flashed back to the robed man, and I briefly wondered what god he served. The scent of incense clung too thickly to him for his crimson robes to have been a ruse. Cherub was again waiting for me when I entered, rosy-cheeked smile and huge, dark, fathomless eyes. I missed the pitter-patter of small feet due to the music screaming in my ears, and was only just able to cloak myself in the darkest corner of the room as the door opened. The older boy peeked in and smiled at Cherub, putting a finger of silence to his lips. He padded over to the crib and offered up a small trinket to his tiny brother. Green jewels glittered in the moonlight. Shit, I didn't close the window. Cherub took the thing in his chubby hand and leaned forwards. I watched as brother stretched up on his tippy toes, small hands gripping the railing of the crib firmly. He lifted his face up, pressing his forehead to Cherub's. They grinned at each other and rubbed noses. The strange lightness in my chest that I had felt since the blonde devil attacked me suddenly cracked. It felt like I had been stabbed with a red-hot poker right in my shriveled heart. I choked down a cry and dared myself not to move. I must have made some noise, as brother was looking in my direction with confusion plastered over his face. As he crept toward me, I turned off the music in my earbuds, hoping he hadn't heard any residual noise. He paused in front of the window. Any closer and he'd have to die as well. My heart thudded and threatened to explode from my chest. I could feel a whine of excitement building in my throat, bubbling up, trying to surface in the sheer ecstasy of the moment. He shut the window and turned to leave. Stopping with one hand on the doorknob, he looked back over his shoulder at Cherub contemplatively. Smiling once more with his finger to his lips, he shut the door behind him. I waited for what felt like an eternity before I dared to exhale. It came out a bit of a moan. What can I say? I couldn't help myself. The biggest thrill is not getting caught. A long, dark shadow was cast over the yard, almost a trail leading back to the trees. It would be the perfect escape. I raised the window once more, snatched the bloody brat, and away we went. I followed the strange pathway of shadow through the moonlit night. We had just made it to my maze of footprints when there was a soft thunk. Cherub squeaked and struggled in my arms for the first time. "Rawr!" he burbled, clawing at my shoulder and reaching down. "Rawr!" There, half covered in snow, glittered the green gift. It was a shamrock brooch. I picked it up and stuffed it in my pocket, absent-mindedly wondering if it'd be worth anything. I shushed the baby as he gripped at my shirt and nestled his head on my shoulder. We continued to follow the shadow, my fresh prints nearly concealed by the ones previously laid. What in the world is casting this long of a shadow? We were deep in the forest when I found my answer. The silver man stood in a pool of moonlight. The snow glittered around him like a dragon's hoard of treasure. He rolled his neck from side to side and flexed his fingers. "What is this feeling?" His voice shattered the silence like so many shards of glass. Tilting his face to the sky, he breathed in deeply, his nostrils flaring. I blinked, and he was now only mere inches from my face. "My mind may not remember what this is, but my body seems to crave it." The corners of his mouth curled upwards, fracturing his serene face into a mask of ghastly terror. The shadow he cast swirled around me, blocking out all the light. Cherub giggled, his grasp on my shirt tightening. "What is it you fear?" Silverman's voice surrounded me. "Manea, what do you think you're doing?" The she-beast that birthed me slapped at my face. Her hand would leave many a mark on my body, but I feared her not. The silver man stepped through the darkness, his eyes black as pitch, his beautiful silver hair now storm gray. Cruel laughter filled my ears. "Aw, look, she's gonna cry." The tall boy shoved me down. I remembered this. I remembered how his hands ripped at my shirt. He had expected to embarrass me by exposing my breasts. The look of horror on he and his gang's faces when instead they saw the bruises that covered my body. I'm sure they suspected abuse. "Bring it on," I growled at the silver man, sneering in delight. The boy quickly pulled off his hoodie and offered it to me. I remembered the shock on his face when I broke his nose, his blood splattering my own. I had earned my black and blues. The silver man seemed angry. I could feel him poking and prodding at intimate memories. His rage built in the darkness and crackled like electricity. He wouldn't find anything he could use against me. "Found it." The sing-song words he uttered were colder and sharper than the winter air around us. My chest began to constrict and my tongue began to swell. Air burned in my lungs like the first ever puff of nicotine. Hot tears began to form in my eyes as guilt threatened to strangle me dead. So many faces, long gone but never forgotten. So much blood on my hands. How many times had I delighted in the broken screams of loved ones finding their beloved cold and stiff. My saliva was thick and sticky as I struggled to swallow. No! No, no, no! I had no guilt. I'd never had guilt. What was this? Sweat rolled down my face and mingled with the tears I had been unaware I was shedding. Cherub squirmed as my hold of him tightened. Eskimo kisses. That's what those were called. The sweet image of brother and cherub gently rubbing noses filled my head. I looked at the tiny boy in my arms, so small and fragile I could snap his neck with one hand. The mental image of brother sobbing over a tiny coffin and clinging to his broken mother's skirt took the air right from my lungs. Silverman loomed over me, laughing maniacally while his long tresses turned the color of squid ink. "More," he bellowed. "More!" I fell to my knees, clutching my chest with one hand while cradling Cherub to me with the other. There, half covered in snow, glittered the green gift. It was a shamrock brooch. I picked it up and stuffed it in my pocket, absent-mindedly wondering if it'd be worth anything. I shushed the baby as he gripped at my shirt and nestled his head on my shoulder. Something about the shadowed path made the hair on the back of my neck raise in stiff little pinpricks. I shrugged off the sudden chill and adjusted Cherub on my hip. We veered right, my fresh prints nearly concealed by the ones previously laid. I'd walked for quite a while before I felt we were far enough away to finally end this stupid job. It had gotten drastically colder, and I considered just leaving the Cherub in the snow to freeze to death. But where's the fun in that? We had just emerged from the trees, and I had no idea where I was. Good enough spot as any. The thought of his blood finally spilling over the stark snow, draining him of the life I had been paid to take, filled me with delight. All right, let's take a good look at you, Cherub. I had shot him in the head, but there wasn't a scratch to be found. His nose crinkled when he let out a monstrous yawn, tiny fist still tightly gripping the fabric over my heart. Don't worry, little one. I ran a finger over his soft, rosy cheek. You'll soon sleep forever. I was deciding whether to slit his throat or kill him with my bare hands when two bright orbs of fire appeared ahead of us. I froze in place, Cherub cradled in my arms. The black of my murder clothes defiantly stood out from the white surrounding us. We were most definitely visible. If I ran for the tree line behind us, we'd be spotted, if we hadn't been already. The orbs came closer at a startling rate. Up and down they bobbed, until finally my eyes focused on the monstrosity camouflaged before us. A giant white fox, as big as an elephant, stood staring me down. If it wasn't for the black nose and the pink, star-shaped scar right between its eyes, I'm not sure I would have realized those glowing orbs were eyes. It blended perfectly with the total white surroundings. Snow cloud-filled night sky, snow-filled fields for miles. Give him back, she snarled, lips pulling back to reveal terrible sharp teeth. I nearly dropped Cherub in surprise, first at the husky feminine voice, second, well, the smoky voice came from a giant fox. I'll tear you limb from limb slowly and chew your bones for hours if I have to. Her hot breath plumed out from her muzzle. I'll take him with me. I pressed the tip of my blade into his side. He whimpered in response. The fox growled and leapt at me. With one quick swipe, I was sent skidding on my back across the frozen ground. Snow rolled down my back like icy fingers burning my flesh. Cherub squalled and rubbed at the snow on his face. I held onto the chubby arm like a lifeline, pulling him closer, intending on ending his short, miserable life while the beast thundered toward us. My leg burned with the fire of 1,000 suns. Warmth spread up my thigh. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. The fox stood over me, muzzle covered in my fresh blood, part of my shin dangling from her lip. I said, give him back, she seethed, my own blood splattering my face. She raised her giant paw. I turned my face away. I didn't want to see it rip away another piece of me. There, half covered in snow, glittered the green gift. It was a shamrock brooch. I picked it up and stuffed it in my pocket, absent-mindedly wondering if it'd be worth anything. I shushed the baby as he gripped at my shirt and nestled his head on my shoulder. We were in the middle of my maze of footprints. My head spun and I felt nauseous. With an increasing sense of déjà vu, I shook my head to rid it of the creeping dread. Something about the trail hidden in the shadow made my skin crawl. I looked to the right and found bile building in my mouth. Left it is. We ran in circles for a while. My left leg burned from the cold. My head throbbed with an oncoming migraine. I needed to finish this quick. I had begun to hear voices calling for the child. I couldn't quite make out his name, but the last time I had passed the house, it had been lit up like a Christmas tree, every light on, and the front door standing wide open. New tracks mingled with my own. Why am I running in circles? I paused to catch my breath and listen to the voices. They sounded small and far away. A wicked plan began to form in my head. Everything at the house was still. Everyone was out looking for Cherub. How wickedly wonderful would it be for them to finally give up, come home, and find him dead in his bed. I couldn't help but let slip a chuckle. I carefully picked my way through the trees behind the house. No lights were on in the back. You could see straight through the house to the lit rooms in the front. How perfect. No one thought to even check the backyard. I could just leave his body here. No, it would be orgasmic to see them screaming and clutching at each other around his bloodied crib. I was only a few yards away from the back door when Mother stepped from the shadows of the wraparound porch, steaming cup of tea in her hand, her back to the moon, her face hidden from me. She hugged her long sweater to her body. "Who are you?" Her voice was soft, not even a sliver of fear. "Does it matter? Why have you taken him?" Did I imagine her voice hardening? I laughed in response. What could this tiny woman do? Her face finally came into the light. She was much younger than I thought, barely full grown. Maybe she'd planned to throw her tea at me. "You'll give me back my son now." "I'll give you his corpse," I sneered. The cup fell from her fingers, forgotten. She held out her hands, as if asking me again to return her son. I watched in surprise as a ball of soft golden light filled her palm. The light spun out from her hand, separating into thousands of tiny glints, like sand dancing on the wind or fireflies in the night. It swirled around her, flipping her hair this way and that, lifting her off her feet. Stupefied, I just stood there as the whirling light came towards me, covering me in its glittering gold. I held my free hand out, Cherub snugly tucked against my breast with the other. The tiny grains lit my skin and made it glow. Not a single piece touched the child. The beautiful dust danced against me. Awestruck, I watched it move and shimmer. I ran it through my fingers. It felt like silken sand. My eyes met Mother's in confusion. What was this beautiful display? Did she plan to charm me into giving back her son? Or did she think that the thought of finding glitter in my ass crack for weeks to be such a threat that I wouldn't end him? She smiled, her hair still billowed around her, her toes barely touching the snow. She closed her fist. Her eyes were cold and hard. I looked back down at my hand and watched in horror as dark spots began to form over skin that was now too thin and wrinkled. Cherub giggled in my ear, his fist now gripping my shirt so hard I could feel his nails digging into my chest. My lungs seemed to harden and my breath came in great wheezes. Hair fell from my head in great clumps as my strength began to leave my body. "What's happening? What are you doing to me? What are you?" Was that my voice? It sounded so old and frail. I fell to my knees. There, half covered in snow, glittered the green gift. It was a shamrock brooch. I picked it up and stuffed it in. "Dante, what are you doing?" Mother let out a startled shout. My neck ached. I opened my eyes and found only pale blueness. I could hardly swallow. My mouth was so dry. "He's cutting his teeth, Moira," Let the boy be. She deserves anything he gives her," chuckled a voice behind me. The creak of the rocking chair. I'm in his room? How'd I get here? I blinked. My eyes felt like they were full of sand. "Charlie?" Her voice was hesitant and filled with surprise. Something like that." "Oh," I'm looking at the ceiling. I lowered my head. A groan of agony escaped my lips. My whole body ached. Cherub's cosmic eyes looked up at me, his tiny hand pressed tightly over my heart, my hands still grasping him mid-pickup. Morning light filtered through the curtains. "Damn it, Charlie! I don't want him to become an addict like you." Mother sounded pissed as she pulled Cherub from my grasp and held him against herself. She bounced him as she glared at me. The green brooch fell from his hand. "Rory!" she yelled, eyeing the shamrock. "Well, come along then. You've got some answering to do." I followed her meekly out of the room. And that's how I found myself seated at a dining table, guzzling down milk while scarfing down a PB&J, across from some crazy, powerful celestial being and the devil himself. So, let me tell you, robed man, because I know you're reading this. I fucked up when I didn't ask for more details in the job you gave me. You fucked up when you gave me this job. The kid's alive. His dads are pissed. Oh, and P.S. I don't have schizophrenia. Turns out that in this fucked up, twisted world I just walked into, the shadows talk. They're called boogies. I'm not crazy. You're crazy.
Shalom.